welcome. I'd like to thank everyone for joining this webinar to learn from our speakers and panelists in recruiting and engaging people in your organization, including myself. We have 4 speakers who will speak to their youth programs, got some panel questions, and then some questions from the floor. So to begin, for those of you who are new to our webinars, I'd like to share a little bit about Ontario Nature, which is a conservation organization that protects wild species and wild spaces through conservation, education, and public engagement since 1931. Since it was established as the Federation of Ontario Naturalists, we've been a champion for nature, registered charity that represents more than 30,000 members and supporters and more than 150 member groups across Ontario. These member groups are a part of our Nature Network, which I know most of you are a part of, consisting of nature clubs and local conservation groups that are our eyes and ears on the ground, helping to bring local issues across Ontario to the attention of the province. So at Ontario Nature, we also have a number of programs like our Boreal program, the Conservation Science program, Nature Reserves program, and the program that I manage is the Nature Guardians Youth Program. So the Nature Guardians Youth Program cultivates a lifelong commitment to nature and young leaders with the skills, experience, and confidence to serve their communities through conservation action and volunteerism. Our Youth Circle for Mother Earth program, our annual Youth Summit, our Special Spaces conservation volunteering events, and the Youth Council are a part of this program. So I'd like to also give you a little bit of history and how this program started to spark some ideas for your group. So at first, the age range was quite large. It was kids as young as 5 up to age 18. And the program was to address the need to get kids outside with nature preservation activities. Our first gathering for the program was the Youth Summit in 2010. For us, it was important to bring youth together, but it was also extremely important to give something to them. What would they get out of coming to this event? If there's nothing for them, they won't come into this empty space. So what came out of that first summit was truly magical. There were youth who attended the first summit and didn't want it to end, which organically brought together the formation of the Ontario Nature Youth Council. Since then, they have led a pollinator campaign, had opportunities to grow their skills through workshops, lead conservation volunteering events in their communities since 2011, and a number of presentations. Today, the Nature Guardians Youth Program focuses on high school students and post-secondary youth, so age 13 to 30. We've hosted 13 youth summits, both in person and virtually, which is an opportunity for youth to come together, learn from experts and each other, Indigenous knowledge holders, elders, and to build that sort of network of youth across the province. We have built a network of youth leaders learning to learn more about conservation and youth advocacy, along with program alumni who have mentored active program participants. Adaptability and using platforms that work for youth to keep engagement high has been a key part of our program. Events have been planned and led by youth in both virtual and in-person events. So at the bottom right there, we've got a youth council member who hosted a birding walk at Paletta Park in Burlington. And then we've also got virtual workshops, meetings, and webinars on topics that they wanted to lead and that they're most interested in, including one about pollinators, tree ID, and spring wildflower ID. We've also had speakers come to speak about their experiences in conservation and figuring out post-secondary options as well, which is really important for our youth. So based on our experience, I'd like to share some suggestions for groups based on what we've found in a number of years of the program. I found what's really important is to do your research. Who's already in your network? This could be parents, teachers, connections with youth serving organizations. You never know who you're connected with. For example, the birding event on the right, we held with a youth serving community organization called For Youth Initiative in Toronto, where we invited their program youth on a hike to Cedarvale Ravine, just a few minutes away from their hubs. And that connection was something I didn't realize within my own network, and kind of fostered that relationship there into these birding events. Teachers in schools are a great place to start as well. What can your organization offer as a part of maybe the science curriculum or for their eco teams initiatives? There could be that one youth in your local high school that is interested in biodiversity and native species. I've had guidance counselors reach out to Ontario Nature about opportunities for youth in their school that are interested in environment and conservation. Also, what workshops can you offer that are interesting to youth? Ideally, some skills building, maybe again, identification, like species identification. I know that, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry. There's so many other options that are interesting to youth, but you'd have to listen and hear from them. Offering volunteer hours to help to plan for event or supporting your organization's work is another way to get these youth involved. Many of our teens are interested in getting volunteer hours as part of their community service requirement, but also for their post-secondary applications. As you can see on the right, on the bottom right, 2 of our youth council members here on the side volunteered at the Southern Ontario Orchid Society show and sale this past weekend, actually, talking about who Ontario Nature is and why wetlands are important for native orchids. One thing to note here is that some school boards have different requirements on what counts as volunteer hours, but again, that is also part of your research. And then other takeaways that we've considered in the delivery of this program, limiting barriers to participate. What's important for youth nowadays is, are you holding a safe space for youth? Is the environment welcoming for youth? Can they bring a friend along or for support? How accessible is your event, not just for any physical accessibility needs, but culturally and socially as well? Costs to attend. If you're able to, are you able to cover travel or get them from place to place? How much time will this activity take? Is there food or snacks available? Food always brings together no matter what the age. Think about the opportunities to gather. Why are you bringing them in? Finding out that why will take some time, but should incorporate the interests of the youth too. And back to what I mentioned earlier, what can youth get out of it? Is there something tangible, like a certificate of completion? Is there a scholarship award that you are offering? Is there a skill that they can learn from someone in your group that can teach them? I can't stress this enough for high school students. Volunteer hours are really important. I find that this time of year and in September is when I get the most requests to join the youth council to fulfill those hours. My last takeaway is to keep ideas fresh and relevant for your organization. Give opportunities for youth to speak at the table, provide ideas for events and your ideas. Give them the opportunity to lead, like social media, creating posters, supporting a talk at a club meeting, for example. They can potentially introduce the guest speaker and thank the guest speaker for their time. Young people have so many ideas, and it's a great opportunity for intergenerational learning as well. And on that note, I would like to introduce one of our members of the Ontario Nature Youth Council. Hopefully their tech issues are good now, to give their insight on their involvement with Ontario Nature. Our youth council is currently comprised of 45 youth aged 14 to 20 who are dedicated to inspiring, connecting, and educating our communities while protecting wild species and wild spaces. They're the youth voice for Ontario Nature and guide the Nature Guardians youth program. So their name is Sam Cameron. I'd like to pass the mic over to them if possible.
Hi. So I should talk about my involvement in the youth council, basically. So this is a poster from an event that I did here. I was able to run a invasive plant pull at a local green space at Dixon Woods near me, which I was able to promote through the youth council and through my school. And another thing I've done is, as these pictures here on the right show the Peterborough hub of the oh God, what is it called again? I'm so sorry. The
Youth Summit.
Youth Summit, thank you. That I was at. I'm a little bit nervous.
You're doing great.
And so I was there, and I got to learn a lot of things, and we got to do that was a cool opportunity I got at the council. That's basically, I don't know what else to say for this part. That's what I'm supposed to say for the slide, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Sam. I guess one thing that you can mention to our group here is how you heard about the youth council and why you joined.
So I heard about the youth council from my local naturalist club, just from like people I knew, actually from someone I knew from Dixon Woods. And I was interested in joining, I think in part because of the hours, but also because I really wanted to be able to sort of I wanted to have like leadership opportunities, be able to feel like I'm like, doing something to protect my local green spaces. And, it felt like it's a nice opportunity to sort of feel empowered and take action. So it's nice. And that's why I was like really interested in joining, especially.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sam. Thanks for giving us a little bit of an insight of your experience as a youth council member. You did great. I'm going to pass this back to Leslie to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Christine. If you just want to stop sharing. Great. So thank you, Christine. Thank you, Sam, for that. And our next speaker is Margaret Paré. Marg is from the Waterloo Region Nature Club, and she's with the Waterloo Region Nature Teens. And we will just let her share her screen and give some insight at what her group is doing.
Okay, does that look good?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to tell you about the first 5 years of Waterloo Region Nature Teens. I'm really glad to be able to work outside with young people, something I used to do and enjoyed a lot before I retired from teaching. I'll explain how we started, the wonderful support that we have, and I'll give you an idea of some of the projects that we've done. I belong to Waterloo Region Nature, the adult club, and I had volunteered with the club they sponsor for 7 to 12-year-olds called Waterloo Region Nature Kids. It was great, but we weren't offering anything for people in between kids and adults. So in 2018, I proposed that we start Waterloo Region Nature Teens. The WRN board and members were very supportive and even had money set aside for youth. They're also a great source of expertise. That and some teens who took a chance and tried us out got us started. At first, we met one Saturday a month during the school year. The idea was to challenge teens to learn about nature while working to help it. Since they'd be working, the time would count as high school volunteer hours. We also do learning activities that don't count, but work is our first priority. Waterloo Region Nature's webmaster set up our online registration. We publicized to the kids club and the adults club on Facebook, and we sent a poster to all the high schools in the region. We hoped for 10 teens to start, and that first year our registration got up to 16 and later as high as 30. So far, over 5 years, 70 teens have been part of teens. At first, we said teens had to be 13 or in high school, but right away we had inquiries like, my child is really interested and they're not 13 yet, can they start now? Close enough, and we added almost. Almost in high school, almost 13, come on out. Now we needed projects. Good thing we had lots of connections through WRN. We contacted organizations hoping they'd teach us how to do a job that they needed done. Our first ever project was creating a turtle nesting area at a nature center. Another organization that put us to work was Rare Charitable Research Reserve in Cambridge. It's a 1,000-acre property where so many groups do projects and research. Our first time there, we learned to identify and remove invasive plants. Another time at Rare, we moved boulders to do a stream restoration. And I think the harder the job, the better, because that was one of our most popular projects ever. And recently we did a study of the creatures and the water quality in the Grand River at Rare. Another location we use for projects is a property that WRN owns. Here, teens are moving some muddy tarps for an ongoing invasive plant removal. And this one is our best connection ever. For many years, the Westfall Hill family have been transforming their beautiful farm near Waterloo into a private nature reserve called Spruce Haven. And I told them I would repeat to you that it's a private property, it's not open to the public. But as you can see, it is stunning. This family is incredibly generous and they welcome anyone with a project. People go there to study barn swallows, moths. There are beehives, nest boxes, photography projects. Both WRN kids and teens have an open invitation to go there. During the pandemic, we appreciated having access to nature experts on Zoom, but we were so glad when the rules changed back and the Spruce Haven folks could provide what we really wanted again, a place to meet outside. The great thing is there's always work to do at Spruce Haven. We've planted trees. We've collected wildflower seeds for pollinator gardens at schools. We removed sumac, which had spread where it wasn't wanted in the native prairie there. And we collected garbage along the road, which was more popular than you would think. And no, the teens did not get to drive the utility vehicle. And recently we had our first joint project with WRN kids. We trimmed branches along the trails and got to take the branches home to make decorations. At one point, the owners of Spruce Haven worked with Ducks Unlimited to create a wetland. They dug a huge hole with a walkway across the middle. Teens was invited to stabilize the banks by planting 100 trees and shrubs. The trees are growing, and though the water level varies, it is a wetland, and the owners called it Teen Hollow. As well as work projects, we've also used Spruce Haven for lots of learning activities, using iNaturalist, observing bird banding, learning about salamanders, mammal skulls. We had a pond study, and we learned also about other people's research, like this moth study. So we were working and learning at Spruce Haven. Then something even better happened. One of the research projects at Spruce Haven was salamander monitoring by ecology students from the University of Waterloo. They weren't able to continue their project. So during our first year of teens, we were invited to take over their work. On top of the monthly afternoon projects at various locations, we'd now have 6 to 8 Saturday mornings of weekly monitoring at Spruce Haven in the spring and again in the fall. One adult volunteer coordinates monitoring and another has done salamander research. So the teens are pretty inspired about salamanders and they love doing this work. Then in our second year, we were invited to monitor some of the nest boxes for eastern bluebirds at Spruce Haven. We were assigned 9 boxes that they called Teens Row. We did this job when we were there anyway for salamanders, but it also added Saturday mornings for most of the summer. Another adult volunteer coordinates this job, and the teens are thrilled to see the development of the young birds. In our fourth year, one of our volunteers who runs a nature center offered to add tree frog tubes to our salamander location in the woods, and he now coordinates our tree frog monitoring. So we had 3 monitoring jobs and a growing pile of data sheets. This year, in year 5, we finally started doing something with all our data and found a couple of teens who want to come out in their free time to create spreadsheets. So with weekly monitoring from spring to fall, a couple of work projects or learning activities a month, and occasional hikes, we now meet about 30 Saturdays a year, often with a morning and an afternoon activity. And to finish up, I'll just mention some other projects. We do gardening 3 times a year at a neighborhood pollinator garden. We've built nest boxes a couple of times with WRN members who do woodworking. We have a standing invitation with a birding mentor, the same park in Cambridge in every season to see the changes over time. And we're very proud of this project, which was initiated by a teen. She noticed invasive plants in her neighborhood and contacted the city to plan for teens to come as volunteers to remove the plants. The project was organized, then canceled during the pandemic. The teen graduated from high school and moved away, but she came home to lead the project. As well, the University of Waterloo Ecology Lab welcomes us for an annual tour and a science activity in the lab. And we go on hikes, owl prowls, a mushroom hike, an ecology hike led by a researcher from the other local university, Wilfrid Laurier. And finally, a couple of things about connecting as a group. Every year, each teen chooses a welcome gift. We have stuff with the WRN logo, which is super popular, small field guides, ID charts. We also connect by sharing photos online and of course by regular emails. We have a teen reporting on each project, info about our activities, as well as the adult clubs and other organizations' events. Teens participate mostly without their parents, but inviting families to help out occasionally is another great way to connect. We also started training teens as hike leaders by having them guide their families and friends on a visit of Spruce Haven. And that's what Waterloo Region Nature Teens is all about. And I just want to say thank you to Ontario Nature for the invitation to talk about it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Marg. Lots of good things going on there in Waterloo Region. Our next speaker is Miranda Virtanen. Miranda is from the Junction Creek Stewardship Committee in Sudbury. And I will leave it to you, Miranda.
Great, thank you. I'll just get my slideshow going. And Marg, those programs sound like a lot of fun. I want to participate. Got a lot of inspirational ideas already for what we can do. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the Empowering Youth for Junction Creek program and some of the work that the Junction Creek Stewardship Committee does. I'm going to start by introducing Junction Creek because it's an important aspect of how our programs operate and how we kind of try to remove as many barriers as possible for our participants. So Junction Creek, the watershed, this is a map of the watershed here on the left. It's situated in the traditional lands of Atikamekw, Anishinaabe, and Wante First Nation and spans the homelands of Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Métis people. And Junction Creek, also known as Nebe-Nekwejuang, is 52 kilometers in length within the watershed boundaries. So it's quite long and goes through the heart of Nisswakamak, Sudbury, and has been described actually by one of the youth as the spine of the city. There's various tributaries that connect to it, and the creek, after that 52-kilometer stretch, drains into the Vermilion River, then the Spanish River, and into Lake Huron. So there's a lot of communities that Junction Creek connects to and that are impacted by the health of the watershed. And the Junction Creek watershed has a lot of amazing natural features that are valued to the community and to the health of the ecosystems. There's even a provincially significant wetland right in the middle. So it's a pretty unique situation where we have all these natural great, beautiful areas in an urban city. And it's in a very unique state where it's still recovering from a lot of devastation from extensive logging and mining that has happened, because Sudbury is a huge mining community. And Sudbury itself is very spaced out geographically. So reaching all these different communities for providing programs can be a challenge at times. So the Junction Creek Stewardship Committee has 4 guiding pillars for the types of programs and community engagement that we do to help restore the Junction Creek watershed. So we conduct research projects to collect information, fill knowledge gaps to have that better understanding about the health of Junction Creek and where to focus our programs and help to inform watershed management. We do restoration activities that focus on recovering those impaired habitats that are most impacted and how to protect the health of the watershed. We provide educational programs to raise awareness and increase that knowledge about the ecological, economic, and health benefits of the watershed. And our final pillar is connecting the community, which is combined in all aspects of our work as far as empowering that long-term stewardship, helping to connect people with Junction Creek, with nature, providing those tools, those resources to empower them to be long-term stewards. So our Empowering Youth for Junction Creek program kind of stemmed in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. There's a lot of changes to our programs, not being able to do a lot of community events, having to do virtual and video programs instead of presentations. So our intern at the time, Lily, she came up with this idea of having a youth urban nature program. So by youth, for youth. And this was something that at first she wasn't unsure that she had the skills or the abilities to do this because she hasn't run educational programs before. So she came to me with the idea and I said, yes, go for it. It sounds amazing. And so she got a lot of support and inspiration from other youth programs that were going on, including the Youth Summit, and kind of ran with that idea. And she really wanted to focus on providing a program that was accessible, nature-based learning for youth, to provide these resources and opportunities to learn about Junction Creek, and empower that next generation of stewards, providing those tools, those resources to help them explore and get connected, making connections not only with nature, but with other youth. And yeah, getting to meet people and also give back to the community and sharing information about the other community programs that are going on that youth might be interested in getting involved with, and having fun outside. So 2021 was our first year of the Empowering Youth for Junction Creek program. That was our pilot year, and that was run by Lily and Lindsay. And it was 1 month long, crammed full of programs. It was a hybrid of virtual and in-person programs, and it was changing all the time because that's when the restrictions for gatherings were also fluctuating. So there was a lot of adapting during that process. So there's 33 sessions in total over this 4-week period, and we had 19 experts and knowledge holders facilitate these sessions. So one of the things that they wanted to focus on was that community collaboration, understanding their own limitations of their expertise and experience, and inviting others that have that deep knowledge to be able to share. So there's 4 main themes for each week, kind of focusing on connecting the youth with themselves and with nature, looking at the research components, looking at the identification, biology aspect, and also the community, giving back to the community. Our second year, last year, our youth program was run by Olivia, Danny, and Adam, and it was different again. So the structure was changed. Instead of being that 1 month crammed full of various programs, it was spread out over the course of 2 months, whereas weekly sessions, and then it had 2 months where it's just monthly sessions. So for each week during the summer, the program was repeated 3 times in different communities. So this allowed the program to be accessible to the various youth within these communities spread out in Sudbury. And this was a way to help to reduce those barriers of transportation and accessibility. So a total of 27 sessions were provided, and there were 17 experts and knowledge holders that facilitated these sessions. With each of these programs, we had take-home resources. So that was something that was identified to help enable youth to continue their learning experience, not only during the program itself, but also afterwards at home, and be able to practice these skills and share them with friends and family, and go out and explore other areas. So there was tons of nature guides, ID guides, binoculars, magnifying glass, even paint brushes and water paints. So different ways to kind of explore and get connected with nature and have fun outdoors. And all of these resources that were provided to the participants for free, we're able to get through sponsorships from local businesses. So some of our activities included exploring new spaces. There's a lot of trails along Junction Creek that we're able to use to explore the green spaces and also get up close to the creek itself. The participants looked at native plants and invasive plant species, how to identify them, ways to manage invasive species, and also learning some outdoor skills too. They got to use the resources that were in those conservation take-home kits. So they got to practice how to use the ID guides, how to use the binoculars, and yeah, just get to explore different spots and make new friends and make new connections with nature. There was various opportunities to learn about different species of wildlife. So there was birding ID. They looked at aquatic bugs and fish species as stream health indicators and what those species meant for assessing the quality of the water. And they also looked at reptile identification and tracking. So part of our research last year included some turtle radio telemetry. So they got to use a radio telemetry unit and see how we measure the different features of turtles as we conduct research. We also involved art in nature, so that opportunity to get creative and crafty, a bit messy, and use items that were sustainable materials, items from nature, and also repurposing garbage to create artwork. So a lot of the programs focused on that sustainability. There was a lot of interest in creating a positive impact on the community and taking action to help to restore the Junction Creek watershed. So we organized some cleanup events, picking up litter and garbage, planting native trees and shrubs and wildflowers, putting up tree guards to protect those newly planted trees from beavers, and doing some invasive species pull of Himalayan balsam. We also helped some community gardens as well. And I think one of the major results that sparked from these empowering youth programs is the formation of the Junction Creek Youth Council, which was formed by a member that had participated and helped lead our youth programs. And yeah, that's been amazing. And so they just started at the end of last year, and really looking forward to where that goes. So they're working on sharing ideas and talking about things that they're concerned about, and helping to raise awareness and spread the word and get other youth engaged in Junction Creek. And yeah, that's about it for my slideshow. So I'll stop sharing now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Miranda, for that. I see people are starting to put questions in the Q&A, and that's totally great. We are going to first have a panel of questions that we have prepared to ask the panelists, and then we'll take questions from the floor after. Okay, so you can still ask your questions, but we'll do our questions first. And I will leave it to Christine to lead that.
Sure. Can I get all of our speakers back on camera? That would be lovely, so everyone can see everybody. I'm just going to put everyone in gallery mode so I can see everyone. Thanks, Miranda and Marg, for speaking to your amazing programs. There's so, even for me, just so much to learn from our perspective here at Ontario Nature. Like Leslie said, we have a few questions that we've put together for our panelists to kind of help spark some ideas for groups that are looking to engage youth. So the first question that I have here is, how do you encourage youth participation in your programs? What do you notice are the most common reasons among youth for getting involved? And in Sam's case, what recommendations you have for groups to successfully motivate you to participate in a group's programming? So I'll start off with Miranda.
Great. Yeah, some key things for encouraging youth participation. So listening to the youth, finding out what their interests are, what we think might be fun, might not be something that the youth are interested in doing. So reaching out and engaging the youth in the development of the program and also throughout the program itself. So checking in and seeing what's working, maybe what's not working, and how that can be changed. So helping the youth feel that they're supported in the space that you're creating, and also providing that clarity to make the program the most meaningful that it can be. So we've found that a lot of youth were interested in volunteer hours, as you were mentioning, Christine, and making a difference. So doing something in the community that was hands-on, that they could see those results and feel good. And yeah, just getting outdoors and having fun, especially after COVID, when there's a lot of on-screen presence. It was really, yeah, they found it really nice to get outside and not be near a computer screen at all. And another thing that we found important was building that trust and relationship to be able to engage the youth to participate. So we found that a lot of the youth that were participating were involved in some of our previous programs. So either some of our festivals or events they've attended, or they volunteered in past cleanup activities, or they've seen us present at their school doing an educational presentation. So that helped them kind of get to know us. We also provided bios about the leaders and the facilitators that were going to be part of the different sessions. So that helped to give them an understanding of who was going to be providing the programs. We also provided a description of what the sessions would entail, so they know what to expect, and welcome them to bring friends and family members, siblings. I know that there's a couple that brought siblings, even if they weren't like in that age range, that helped them feel more comfortable. And some people who weren't interested in nature and the environment, after being dragged into these programs, are loving it and want to do more nature and environmental programs. So yeah, that's great. And then the last one, trying to reduce barriers to make it inclusive and accessible. So finding out what might be impeding youth from participating and how you can remove those barriers.
That's awesome, Miranda. A lot of it is very much relevant to how we do our programming as well. Building that relationship and allowing for past participants to come back and have a role is really important too, but building those relationships are super important. Marg, would you like to add to that as well?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, really similar. We ask on our online registration for new registrants to new members to say why they're, or how they found out about us. A lot of it is just word of mouth, and also people just looking for Googling teens activities or nature activities. We ask them why particularly they wanted to join, and volunteer hours is absolutely the #1 reason. Lots of people will just say they love nature experiences and learning opportunities. And like a couple have already said, we invite new people to try it out before they register to see if they like it, just so they don't have to commit right away. The teens are always invited to bring a friend, try it out. And we try to, like you said, make it as fun and welcoming as possible, as inclusive as possible. And although we have to have, the way ours is set up, we have to have some adult volunteers, try to remember as adult volunteers to take a back seat and let the teens have the floor and say, you know, be as involved and as actively involved as possible.
Great. Thanks, Mark. It's really important to give them that lead too. And I like how you've also allowed for people to join first before, like, come into your activities before officially signing up, which is really great as well. And Sam, what recommendations do you have for groups to successfully motivate you and your peers to participate in a group's programming?
So one of the things that Miranda actually mentioned that I think was a really good point was about sort of, you brought us something about sort of like community and being able to like sort of get out in your local community and being outside and stuff. And I connect that sort of to being able to connect to nature around where you live. That's something that really excited me when I originally joined. I started volunteering with Dixon Woods and then joined the youth council and trying to sort of engage with the wild spaces sort of near where I live and stuff and getting outside of my community. And then of course, I mean, it's been said before, but hours are a big one. That's me and a lot of everybody wants hours for university for getting out of high school. And also I think like other thing to help motivate is just having something in it for the students is a good one. Like being able to bring your friends, being able to have fun, being able to, as Miranda said, asking the kids what do they want to do, like that type of thing is really good. Like something that's just everyone will find fun, sort of draw people in who might not even do it if it just because of nature or just because they want to intrinsically do it, you know. Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. I'm just gonna put it out there, like you're very good at like involving your friends into an upcoming planting that you're putting together. So I know that your friends are super excited about that. So hopefully that brings more people into more nature programming in your area. So thanks everyone for answering that first question. The second question I have here is, in your experience, what is the most effective way to communicate with youth and maintain that relationship? Or in Sam's case, with other youth council members and Ontario Nature staff. So I'm going to start with Marg this time.
Sure. When we were recruiting, we, as somebody already mentioned, made use of schools and teachers, sending our information directly to science teachers, guidance counselors, and whoever runs the environmental club. Seemed to be a good way to get to people who might be interested in joining us. We found that having a symbol of belonging to the club was actually a pretty big deal. We try to have, when we get new people, we try to have their name tag button ready for the first time that they're there, and the toques and ball caps and all that stuff with the club logo on it. They wear them so much. I know it means something to them to have that sign of belonging. We have found that food was a fun thing to have. We usually had a snack to share, and still until we had to stop doing that during the pandemic. But and the occasional special activity pizza was a good one. We found that ongoing communication is actually kind of tricky. We use email, and not all young people use email. I'll say, "Did you see that in the email, the information?" And they'll say no. So we send emails. We try to have an adult in the household and the teen. So that hopefully the information will get there, and we just say, you know, please somebody look at it and somebody take care of something. So we know the message got there. During COVID, we had online meetings and online challenges and stuff just to sort of still be in touch. When we have a project, we give everybody the list of what their jobs are. So they need to have signed up. They need to know where they're going. They need to tell their driver where to go. We always invite feedback, and I found, you maybe find this if you're starting a new club, that when people don't know each other very well, they're a bit shy. So that took a while to get going. I don't know if I said that we have a online photo sharing page, online sign up for activities, and we try to also be in touch if we know that the teen has a particular interest. We see something, there's one who's particularly into photography. So if I see something about that, I'll send that on to them to make connections so that people have their personal way of being involved. I think that's all.
That's great, Mark. Thank you so much. I totally feel you about the emails as well. Sometimes emails go into spam, and there's just a lot of emails that go into spam. And I know youth council members and our YCME coordinating circle members know I send very lengthy emails. So having like bolded important parts in my email usually brings out the important stuff that they need to read. But I'd like to also ask Sam this question on what you found the most effective way to communicate with other youth council members and Ontario Nature staff, but other youth in your community to involve them into your events and stuff.
So with the Ontario Nature Youth Council members, I think the best thing, honestly, I think the best thing to, in general, to sort of communicate with you is a web, like using email. I use email. A lot of people I know use email, but I use it for this kind of stuff. But I also feel like posting on social media, on Instagram, all that kind of stuff is also good. With Youth Council in particular, though, I think the Discord server for the Youth Council is a really good way to communicate, and also to sort of like feel more comfortable as part of the community. Like as Marg said, it is a thing where you sort of are sometimes shy when you don't really know people, but the server is a great way to sort of, again, like having a Discord server or something like that, where the youth can just communicate with each other all the time, is a good way to sort of get people used to each other, so they're like sort of more open. And the other thing I think is schools, for sure. Like I like to go through my eco club to organize events and to promote them to other youth, and I think that's like generally going through schools is a really good way to communicate with youth, because that's where they are most of the day. So yeah, that's what I would say about communication.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. I guess I should probably give a little bit of a spiel on Discord. Discord is an online platform that our youth council uses, kind of a way for them to connect informally. It's also heavily monitored by staff as well. So myself and Maya, our education coordinator, also monitor it as well. So there is a code of conduct that youth have to agree to before they officially get into the server. But it's a really great place for them to connect. I know that our Nature channel is a very popular one where youth council members share their nature photos in our server, and everyone gets really excited about it. So it's just a really great opportunity for our youth council members to connect outside of their areas as well. And Miranda, I'll pass it to you for this question.
Yeah, so initially we were having difficulties trying to reach out to the youth and spread the word, because we were also trying to get feedback as well before we started the program to help develop it. And we found is helpful, like for advertising, to know your audience, not so that the visuals, like the graphics, aren't too like young, childish oriented, so that they are something that's engaging and interesting for teens. And yeah, using virtual platforms, so the social media, know what kind of social media that teens are using. Like Facebook isn't one that teens aren't using so much. So yeah, Instagram. And we started to experiment with TikTok as well last year. And yeah, we were using programs like the Google Classroom and Calendar for a lot of the like the sessions that were going on to coordinate and provide information. And that worked pretty well. And yeah, we also found it helpful when we had youth involved with leading the program, because then they could help provide that guidance on ways that we could reach more youth, and then they could share it with their friends and their networks. And yeah, also reaching out to environmental groups and other youth programs and organizations in the community.
Thanks, Miranda, and thanks everyone for answering that question. There's so much there on different ways to reach you. I totally feel you on the Facebook page. I remember youth council members being like, Christine, no one uses Facebook from us. Like, we don't use it. I'm like, okay, well, we have other options as well. Not everyone uses the same sort of way. So as long as it reaches the people in your network, that's the best way to kind of reach out to those youth. So our next question is, are there barriers that you could share that groups should address in developing youth programming and engaging young people? I know this has already been kind of talked about in our presentations, but how did you address these barriers? And in Sam's case, what are some roadblocks or reasons for not participating? So let's start with Sam for this question.
So for this question, there's several issues. I think a personal one that I actually wanted to bring up was with food. So a lot of these events have food. As an allergy person, it can be an issue. I think it's like something that's important to address before, like sort of asking youth what their dietary needs are in order so that someone doesn't feel sort of stressed about food at an event. That is something that has prevented me from doing things like this before. But one of the biggest ones for me is actually like the age difference. With a lot of naturalist groups and stuff, youth can feel intimidated. I have felt intimidated because most people in the group are significantly older, generally in a lot of natural communities. So that's an important thing to sort of address sort of I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but it is a roadblock that I've definitely encountered a lot, is sort of the fear of like, oh my God, and also the sort of stress of everyone looking up to me as like or whatever youth is there, because it might just be one, as the shining light of a hope for the future, and everyone's sort of like talking to you a lot and stuff, and it can be a lot of pressure and sort of stressful.
That's a great point, Sam. And I know this is something that you have brought up to us in our conversations as well. I'm also a food allergy person, so I totally understand with making sure that the food is also available for those who have those severe allergies, but also like to kind of address those like sort of roadblocks for youth, so that they don't feel like there's a huge age range, like age gap between their group and the naturalist clubs. Like inviting more youth, like allowing more space for youth can definitely help. When someone has a buddy, they feel much better. So that's kind of like my takeaway from what you've said there, Sam. And then next, I'd like to pass it to Miranda here.
Yeah, so we've experienced barriers like at an organization level, like internal capacity barriers, and then we've also kind of addressed barriers that the youth have experienced in being able to participate in the program. So at the organizational level, our own capacities, we found it difficult because most of our programs are run by interns, which are 1 year long internships. So we have that that kind of staff turnover, a high staff turnover. So how are we going to make it consistent, carrying out this program and learning from those mistakes and kind of growing over the years if it's going to be someone different managing it each year? So we've been able to address that by creating instructional guide. So the people that are leading the programs, they record a lot of comments and notes and suggestions on how they ran it, how they coordinated it, and tips for next year, and yeah, suggestions like that. The funding was also a huge barrier for us at our capacity level. So we tried to apply for grants, and sponsorships was the most effective way. Businesses wanted to support local youth, doing local activities, connecting to the community and nature. So that worked really well for being able to provide those free resources and to make sure that these programs were free for youth. So that's one of the barriers that we wanted to remove for youth being able to participate, is having it as a free program and providing these resources so that they don't have to come prepared with their own gear, because not everyone's going to have their own like binoculars and field guides. So we wanted to make sure that anyone can participate no matter their level of experience being outdoors. They don't have to be like an avid outdoor enthusiast per se. We also wanted to make sure that is accessible. So transportation is something that's huge for Sudbury because we're so spread out. With Creek being 52 kilometers in length, it's a long way for trying to get youth to come out to one location. So that's why the second year we tried doing it in 3 different locations and just repeating that. So it was the same in those 3 locations, which worked out good. And we also provided free public transportation. So the city, we partnered with them and they provided those bus passes for the youth to be able to use so that yeah, they could be able to access the programs. We made sure that we provide the programs on bus routes so that they would be able to use the buses. And our field trips in the fall, the field trip that was a bit further outside of the city, we had a bus that we paid for. So we picked up the youth from those 3 locations along the way and brought them to this field trip, and then brought them back, like dropped them off too. So that, yeah, that worked really well. And yeah, the other barrier that we've been trying to work on is trying to make the program as inclusive as possible. And that's like, we're still working on that because there's a lot to do at the organizational level too, as far as like how our programs are run, and building those relationships with the community, and making sure that we can support those marginalized communities within the watershed. And so that just takes some time to build that trust and relationship, and yeah, kind of learn, unlearn, relearn. So that's something that we're constantly growing and building on.
Thanks, Miranda. That last point you mentioned about inclusivity and making it really making your programs inclusive. That's one key learning that we've had too, is that you have to make the time to build those relationships with the direct community. You can't be like, hey, come in, like, we want you in this program. They're not a tick box. Like, you don't want these youth to be a tick box. You don't want to be ticking off that marginalized communities sort of checkbox. Like, you want to build those relationships first so that they feel comfortable enough to be like, I'd love to come to this event. And I think, like, I remember during our birding hike, one of the youth was like, I've never seen myself or people in my community out in nature like this. Just seeing a whole bunch of people that have been that have never explored this area that's so close to my house, in one really cool event, like, really inspire them to go out more. So it's just like that one event that allows for that opportunity for youth who may not have explored the outdoors before. So thanks, Miranda. And Mark, did I already reach out to Mark for this question as well?
Not yet.
Okay, Mark, on to you.
Okay. We about money. We decided to charge our annual registration fee of $25 without really knowing what our budget would be. And I think I mentioned in my presentation, the Waterloo Region Nature Adult Club already had a youth fund, and they were funding activities elsewhere because there weren't any where we were. So we knew there was money available. And I just said on the registration, it's $25 a year and sponsorships are available. It did put the onus on people to ask, but we could easily make that happen. During the pandemic, all the clubs, our kids and adults and teens clubs, canceled the fees because less stuff was being offered. And we found that a lot of people signed up but never showed up. So it's kind of hard to know. I love the free club and free transport. That's amazing. It was always really important to me that the club be inclusive. I wanted anybody who wanted to be there to be able to join. We had newcomers who did not have English as a first language, so we were trying to be super careful that the communication was always very clear and straightforward. We'd always have a map where to go, those kinds of things. We were trying to be as open and welcoming to all gender identities. We tried to show our openness, and we do our best with pronouns. We don't have public transit to all the places we go. I don't know if that means we should change where we go sometimes, but we tried to help a family who needed it to connect with another one for a ride. And I like your point also, I think it was Miranda who said that we wanted it to be welcoming to people who were interested but didn't necessarily have a lot of knowledge about nature, and there was absolutely no expectation. And we did, if you have binoculars, bring them. If not, there'll be some to borrow, that kind of thing. We also we ask people, how could we help you? How could we make it more welcoming to you? And a lot of folks won't respond to that, but we keep asking. And we did, in a couple of cases, we're made aware of mental health and physical health challenges, and we found ways. We wanted teens to participate without their parents mostly, but for some teens to for it to work for them, having a parent along was the accommodation that they needed. So obviously that was just fine. So it's a communication both ways to find out what's needed. And we tried to give a role to people who finished high school and are still interested. We have our first, what I call graduate teen, who is now a parent, not a parent, adult volunteer with the club. So trying to find a role for everybody.
That's great, Mark. Thank you so much. Our next question here is, what is one piece of programming that stood out as a success to you? What takeaways can other organizations use from this example? So I'm going to go back to Miranda.
I think one piece of programming that really stood out as a success to us was acting as facilitators instead of educators. So instead of like teaching down, it was more everyone was learning from each other. And we found it really successful collaborating with community partners, local experts and knowledge holders we understood our limitations as experts, and to invite others who have that wealth of knowledge and to be able to share that with the youth, and also connect the youth with local programs or activities that they may be interested in, never knew anything about. So it was really, really successful engaging the community in that way. And yeah, still understanding the other youth programs that are occurring in the community and how we can help to kind of strengthen our programs together, and making sure that we're not taking away and duplicating another program that's happening, but instead kind of complementing each other and sharing those resources. That's been, really helpful. And some takeaways from that is kind of building that relationship, as we were talking before, with those community groups and members, and understanding what their capacities are, and having it open as far as asking them what they would like to facilitate and what they would like to share. I think it was it was really nice because we got to meet so many new people and make so many new relationships and build on those. That it was a lot of fun and really rewarding.
Awesome. Thanks, Miranda. And also, just looking at the time, we also want to leave some questions for the floor to ask our panelists. But for this one, I guess quickly, Marg, if you wanted to share a piece of programming that stood out as a success to you.
Sure. The fact that we got to do monitoring projects that sort of fell into our laps, we were very, very lucky with that. Something that was ongoing, where the teens were building on their skills and ended up being able to lead, was super. And the other thing we found really successful was anything that was difficult, hard physical work. They seemed to love that. And anytime they got to meet somebody who was working in the environment or in environmental education, that seemed to be really meaningful to them as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Marg. And Sam, anything you would like to share quickly?
Quickly, I'll just add about a specific event that I thought was really successful. So I think I mentioned it in my introduction briefly, but last spring I ran a garlic mustard pull event at Dixon Woods near where I live, and I found it really successful. The use of sort of promoting through the school, I thought it was really nice to be able to sort of, as a youth, be able to sort of run or like put together an event on my own, which we felt very empowering, and that helped make it successful too. And it helped me sort of bring in people from my network to do it. And we pulled out a lot of garlic mustard, so it worked out quite well. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. One last question, and we'll make it super quick so we get to the Q&A. What is one lesson learned from providing youth programming and recruiting youth in your community? I'm going to start with Marg.
Sure. I discovered that this kind of stuff can be life-changing. I had a teen who was finishing high school and was going to be moving away. And I said, did you like being in teens? And he said, I've never belonged to anything before. This was wonderful. I was part of a group. We also had a parent who came out to experience Canadian nature for the very first time. So yeah, it can be a really big experience for people.
Great. Thanks, Marg. And Sam, one one lesson learned for youth programming and recruiting youth in the community that you'd like to share?
One lesson for recruiting youth, I've already said it on 2 questions, but my one lesson for recruiting youth, my number one has to be like, go to where the youth are, go to the schools, go to, you know, all that kind of stuff, and sort of let the youth sort of talk to their network, that type of, that's and my biggest lesson. I think it's worked for events I've done in the past, and the event that I'm going to be doing this spring is trying to go through schools, through eco clubs, and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Just reiterating it for everybody for the 3rd time, so it's all good. And Miranda, for you?
Yeah, not letting the fear of failure stand in the way of something that's meaningful. And to make sure to celebrate those little successes. It's easy to fixate on ways that you can improve and make things better, but it's also important to take that time to celebrate what has been accomplished.
Absolutely. Thanks, Miranda. I'm going to pass it back to Leslie to help facilitate our Q&A from the floor.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you all the panelists for answering those questions. That's great. That's really helpful. So I'm going to start going through questions, and if we do run out of time, we are going to share everybody's email at the end that they have agreed, or Miranda and Margs anyways have agreed to share their email. So if you have questions after that don't get answered, please do feel free to email them, or Christine or myself. Okay, so the first question was about leadership. Who educates or leads the teens programs, and do you have experts, bring in experts, or are they just everyday volunteers from your club? So I guess that's for Miranda or Marg, generally who leads these programs.
I can jump in. The Adults Nature Club that sponsors our teens group has a lot of people some who are serious experts and a lot who are knowledgeable amateurs, and we unashamedly ask them for favors constantly, and they're pretty willing to share their knowledge and go out with young people. It's not a big deal. We also, if we contact a community organization, if we go to a nature center, they want a job done, their staff will be teaching us. Sometimes we pay for that, not always. And we have some wonderful connections through the families that are involved. So if a teen is interested in nature, often their parents have some kind of involvement too. So all of those places are ways that we've got leaders of activities, but they don't necessarily have to be experts. If we're planting trees, you don't have to be a big expert to do that, for example.
And the other panelists want to add to that, or is that?
Sure, I'll add. It depends on the year, but generally we during the summertime we have a lot of students and interns on our team. So right now there's only 3 employees, including myself, but we grow up to around 10. And we also have a wonderful group of volunteer board members who are experts in different areas. So we are able to kind of tap into those skill sets, but we try to reach out to local experts and knowledge holders as much as possible to welcome them in and be facilitators.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, how do you cover liability issues, and do you need to do police checks?
Okay. I get a lot of advice from the board of the Waterloo Region Nature Adult Club if ever I have a question about that, and we pay a lot of attention to insurance. So we don't drive, the volunteers don't drive the participants, for example. That's why we organize with a family to do that, because we wouldn't be covered for insurance. We will never go canoeing because we're not insured for any activities around water, that kind of thing. So we're really careful about that. We have had a kids club for, I don't know, 30 years or something, and the kids participate with their families. So honestly, I think it had never occurred to anybody that we should have police checks, but I think we probably should for the adults working with teens who come without their parents, and we have not done that.
Christine or Miranda?
I'm going to add in here. So for any part of our youth programming for Ontario Nature, that includes the Youth Summit, any overnight events, all of our staff or any chaperones are required to complete a police check, which we do on our end. It's just something that we've had part of our program for a very long time. And even if a mentor is the age of 18 and they're considered a chaperone, we require them to do a police check. So that's my answer. Miranda?
Yeah, our staff and interns, they have police checks, and our organization has that liability insurance, and we also have waivers that we ask the participants to complete.
Yeah, maybe just one more quick detail. Sometimes we work with really small groups of people, but we always have to have 2 adults present.
I'll also add on to that. We usually have a ratio from chaperones to youth. So for our youth summit, for example, or any retreats, our ratio is typically 1 to 8. I know that some summer camps are like 1 adult per 12. So it's actually a little bit better than some camps, but that's kind of our ratio.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how long would you say the ideal length to make a youth program? For example, 2 hours, once a week, what kind of, how long and maybe how frequent is this sort of part of that question?
Ours are almost always 2 hours long. And we're not quite, well, one of our jobs, our morning monitoring is every week for a good part of the year. Otherwise, a couple times a month.
Can I jump in on this one?
Yes.
I enjoy frequent events. Like I like the idea, like having things that are like sort of regular. So, and I think a lot of youth like that, and it allows you to forge a connection. So I think weekly or once every couple of weeks is a pretty good way to do it, and an hour or 2 is pretty good.
I will add to that, if you are doing anything virtually, no more than an hour and a half or 2 hours. It's way too much. Our youth don't like feeling like they're in school. So as long as there's like an hour and a half to 2 hours at most, but also the opportunity to be able to go outside and take breaks in between is really important. For our programming, we've done overnight trips, but we've also done, it depends on what's available. So we've also done outreach as well. It kind of is based on what the youth are interested in first, and then we base it off of that. But that's kind of like our ideal length. It's a good mix between like a couple of hours to like a weekend.
Yeah, the 2-hour sessions is usually what we do as well. We find that that's a good time period. We found that August is a time that you won't get that many participants. People are usually busy, so might not be worth scheduling a lot of programs in August, or just don't anticipate a huge turnout during that time. And yeah, the weekly sessions worked out really well when we first did it, and we were doing sessions, like multiple sessions every day. It was a lot, and we realized that youth are busy and they have other things to do too. So yeah, the weekly and monthly sessions worked well.
And we try to remember also that youth are not in charge of their own lives in a lot of ways. They're dependent on rides, what their families are doing, other places they have to be. And if they sign up for hockey, then that comes first.
I'll also add on to what Miranda said about August being a really difficult time. I will also say June is a very difficult time because of exams. The end of May to June is always really tricky. September, like beginning of September when school starts, especially for high school and elementary school kids, that's kind of like a tricky area too. And then for post-secondary, I find that like, depending on what they're doing from April to August in between semesters is sometimes tricky as well, but depends on your age range that you're looking at. So
the next question was kind of partially answered through one of our previous questions, but I'll read it and you can maybe reiterate what style of recruitment seems to be most effective, especially when you are dealing, and this person is talking about when they don't have a lot of youth in their club already to build on those networks. Is it mostly through schools, or what do you do? I know we talked about schools. Is that primarily what people are doing, or is there anything else that?
I would say social media is really great too. I know I see Sam unmuting themselves, so I'll finish up quickly, but social media is a really great tool. Stories are really engaging usually. That's usually how we get our involvement as well. Posts, just consistently posting to kind of like share the opportunities are really important. But I will pass it to Sam to add to that.
I think social media is really good. I have less experience with that, but I do think knowing a lot of youth as one, I would say, yeah, it's like it's a very important post, like Instagram, TikTok, that kind of stuff, very engaging. But also schools and going, that kind of thing. I agree a lot with sort of the mentioning of schools and stuff. That's what I would say is like my main sort of go-to for that kind of stuff.
Great, thanks everyone. Next question is, what has been your experience with using iNaturalist with young people, and how has it been received? Has anybody tried that out?
We've had a couple of sessions learning to use it, and we realized not everyone has a phone, so sharing phones is the first step. We used it for ID just on the spot mostly. Not always posting the stuff onto iNaturalist, but using the iNaturalist instant identification stuff. It's been super popular, really helpful when we were doing stuff like seed collecting, that kind of thing. Some of our teens and some of our volunteers also post stuff, and that's been really interesting. The Spruce Haven, the farm where we go, is a identified site and has a project on iNaturalist. So we've been contributing to that along with a lot of other people.
I am an iNaturalist user and I love it. And I think it's a really good tool for youth. I have not been to any events that have incorporated it or like had any sort of programs on it, but I think it is a really good tool, and sort of introducing it to youth is a very good idea.
We've done a little mini bio blitz with like introducing youth to iNaturalist and seeing how many species they can identify. Yeah, because the community science programs is something that we try to connect to say, hey, these are ways that you could, go out, and if you see anything, you can report sightings and be your own like local scientist to help research projects. We found it useful to have a tablet or a larger screen as an educational tool to use to show the app to the participants as you're going along and using it. So that's something that was helpful.
And just one more thing, we allowed ourselves to change the status of an activity if we were just exploring or looking at flowers or whatever. If we were reporting to iNaturalist with our information, then we considered it citizen science and we counted it for volunteer hours.
Interesting. Good. Okay, the next question was directed specifically to you, Sam. So you're on the spot. Do you have any ideas or strategies for inspiring hopefulness for the future?
I think allowing youth to sort of feel empowered, sort of being able to run events on your own, or like sort of get out there, like have your voice heard as a young person. It feels like there's something you can do personally. Like when when you feel like you're still working sort of under the adults, it still sort of feels like I can't really still do anything on my own to really change stuff and have hope for the future. And I think what's really made me hopeful is sort of being able to sort of have events where the youth feel like they're empowered.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. That was directed towards Sam, but if anybody else wanted to add to that, they certainly could. Okay, the next question is, do you have any suggestions on how to assess the barriers to participation? So what kind of methods do you use to figure out what the barriers are?
So we tried to do feedback, like we had surveys, online surveys, and we also talked with youth, going to different youth-led groups and past participants as well to talk about some of these barriers and what might prevent them from participating. So that's one way that we did it. Yeah, it was hard trying to get surveys completed online. So talking to groups, youth that are in like youth-led programs and groups was the most effective way to be able to discuss it, because then the youth already knew the participants within that group and felt comfortable opening up and sharing.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little embarrassed in front of Sam about this, but I think a lot of our information came through parents. Parents will say, well, my young person has this difficulty, but it was honestly, we were asking and just how can we make things better for you? How can we reach out more? But we were always dependent on somebody having the courage to say it. So it's hard.
That's, yeah, sometimes you don't have the courage to say it. I get that. That makes sense. And it is important for and to come from parents as well. Yeah.
I think we'll just do, let's say we'll do 2 more questions. So related to the barriers, somebody is mentioning that some youth have to work. So there's a financial barrier, not in that the programs cost money, but they have the need to work. So have you had any experience with this or any ways to work around this barrier?
That's pretty difficult because you have to run your program when school's not on. So ours are always on Saturdays. And if you have a part-time job, that would probably be on Saturdays. So yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
I don't either, but I noticed that a lot of youth that participate in our programs, they do it because they want to. They want to get the experience. They want to volunteer their time. That's kind of the youth that we've gotten. Haven't exactly found any good strategies to work around this barrier because it's like the youth are wanting to volunteer their time. Yeah, it's hard to say, but I know that the youth who volunteer their time, they get really excited to ask for references. Like references is another really important part, especially for those who are applying for jobs and university. Like these volunteer opportunities provide that sort of reference, and the amount of reference letters that I've written is kind of excessive. But when you hear back about how, oh, I got the job because of the opportunities that they've had with Ontario Nature and our programming, it kind of helps that sort of part of them finding jobs in the workplace. But I don't have a perfect strategy to get around that barrier.
Okay. So there's one more question about insurance, but I think we sort of addressed that. So, you know, groups do have insurance generally. If you're a member of the Nature Network, talk to me about insurance. We have an insurance program. And then, so I'll take this as the last question. And again, everybody, if you have further questions, you can email them to us afterwards. So the last question is about what barriers your organization has faced in terms of organizing large groups of young people. Have you had a lot of volunteer interest in helping to coordinate? So is it hard? And maybe this is like, is it hard to get the supervisors as well? As might be part of this question.
I will add to this, considering the experiences from past in-person summits when we engage over 100 youth at the same time. I would probably say for us, it hasn't been difficult finding adult volunteer interest because a lot of our chaperones are youth council alumni or staff or even past workshop presenters have come to be chaperones at the summit. So that hasn't been a barrier for us. I think what's one barrier that I've kind of noticed is having that opportunity for them to connect informally, because there's such a big group, you still want them to be able to build those networks. barriers wise, I would probably say just like there's a lot of organization that comes involving with large groups of young people, making sure that there's registration so you understand what sort of accessibility needs are needed, food, like allergies, any other disabilities that should be considered, should be part of that as well. But I will stop there and see if anyone else has anything else to add to that.
In our case, in Waterloo Region Nature Teens, we're not publicizing our club on purpose because it's about as big as we can handle right now. Have about 30 members. We have lots of adult volunteers who will come out as needed, you know, give me a week's notice and I'll come on your hike, that kind of thing. Very few are interested in planning, which is a pain, and emailing, which is even more of a pain. So yeah, that part is probably where we need to be rethinking a little bit. But yeah, it is challenging to know how to divide up the work and be efficient and get enough people.
Thanks. Okay, thank you, everybody. I know there's several more questions, so we look forward to seeing them through email. And Christine, you had a slide with our email you were going to put up there for everybody. So there they are. So myself, Christine, and Maya from Ontario Nature, you can reach out to any of us with these questions. And if you have any questions for Sam, you can direct them to Christine. And Christine can reach out to Sam, and as Sam is able, we'll go back. We just don't give out emails of youth members to the public. And then Marg and Miranda's emails for their respective programs are there as well, and they're willing to accept questions as well. So thank you again to all the panelists for being here. We really appreciate your time and efforts and sharing what you've learned. And thank you to everybody who joined us today.